Hi there, welcome back to Connecting in the Virtual Classroom. My name is Rusty May. I am a school counselor by trade and have been doing distance education for the past 17 years. We created this show to encourage educators to get together and talk about what was going on as they prepare for this unprecedented year going into a situation which is quite difficult for most of us. Thank you for those of you that are watching the recorded version or listening to the podcast. Today I've got Teddy here with me. I'm going to unmute Teddy and see how he's doing. Hi, Teddy.
Hey, Rusty, how are you?
I'm fine. What's going on?
Pretty good. So we started classes this Monday. Overall, we only have one case currently on campus, but we did see a uptick in cases by a nearby university in upstate New York. So they were forced to shut down for 2 weeks. But overall, I think students are getting the grasp of things of how the semester is going to be in terms of wearing their masks, practice social distancing. It's just a matter of seeing how other universities also react to it. There were several hundred cases in other universities, so it's a bit alarming, but for the most part, everything seems to be under control here.
So the university shut down for 2 weeks, basically went back to an online format?
Yeah, so SUNY Oneonta is another university in upstate New York. They opened last week, and within the first 8 days, they had about 100 COVID positive cases. So they decided to shut down for 2 weeks. Other schools that I know, which aren't located in New York State but across the nation, also had an uptick in cases. University of Alabama, Kansas State University, several schools pretty much have seen rises in cases.
So what's it look like around your campus? Are you seeing that the kids are being responsible, that they're, for the most part, following the rules and so forth?
Yeah, since we opened on Monday, I have seen a lot of students pretty much stay outside, social distance, wear their face masks. The university has also provided them face masks across different buildings to grab should in case there's breaks or they may not have one at the moment. But I am seeing the students do their due diligence and making sure that they're not going to be the cause as to why the campus closes down again.
Are people coming into your library?
Yes and no. So they are coming in, but they're coming at a distance. We have a barrier that we prohibit patrons from coming in. They're allowed to stand in front of the door and have their needs or wants met. But we highly recommend all patrons, faculty, staff, students to place all items returned into the book drop to limit that interaction amongst library staff members and student employees. We have a process where we pick up the books wearing gloves. We have a quarantine process where we have the books stored in a separate room for 2 to 3 days before releasing out again for checkout to the public. So we definitely do have a great system put in place, and my supervisor has definitely followed the guidelines from various library associations. But like I said, the only way the outbreak the only way the outbreak can happen again is if students throw parties, as we've seen in previous schools, or if students just don't abide by the CDC guidelines.
Right. All right, let me check in. I'm going to see these other folks. Thank you, Teddy.
You're welcome.
Amina, I was going to add, see if you would like to check in and let us know where you're from, where you're joining us today. Amina, would you like to join us and share a little bit about what's going on? I'm going to go ahead and try and see if we can get Amina. All right, if you want to drop us a note in the chat, Amina, and let us know what you're thinking, I'd appreciate that. Is it Aubrey? Aubrey, are you there? Aubrey, would you like to check in real quick and tell us where you're from? Aubrey? All right, well, again, welcome. If you guys would like to check in, please do so. I'd really like to hear from you. How about Raj, when you get a chance? We're checking in with everyone. So we have Aubrey is here from Michigan. Thank you, Aubrey. Are you an educator? I'd love to unmute you if you wanted to jump in there real quick. How about Raj? Raj, are you interested in jumping in? Let us know where you're visiting us from. Hi, Raj.
Hello, hi. I'm from Dubai.
Oh,
I'm joining from Dubai. Yeah. It's
are
evening
you
here.
are you an educator?
Yes, I teach in an Indian school here.
Okay. What age are the students?
They are 17, 16, 17.
Okay. And so are you starting in person or are you going online?
We are doing online classes.
Okay. So, and did you do that last fall as well?
No, this is the first time.
I mean last spring
We
when it,
started in March this year,
okay. And
on 23rd March.
what was the participation like from your students? Did most of them participate?
They do participate, yes. I teach computer science,
Okay.
yeah, and we actually run programs online as well. So
Okay.
we have different activities for them. Yeah,
Great. Well, thank you for being with us today. I appreciate it.
thank you.
Alfredo, are you there? Would you like to jump in? Or Joanna? We're asking people to introduce themselves and say hello. Melissa. Alfredo, are you, let us know where you're from and where you're visiting today. Hi.
Sure, sure. Thank you. I'm Alfredo from Puerto Rico, San Juan.
Okay. How are things in Puerto Rico after, and I know since the storm and that it's been quite difficult. What are things like in Puerto Rico?
Well, after the most recent one, things have been pretty good, although we have some issues with connectivity. It comes and goes. Power isn't as stable as it was before the latest hurricane. And we have 3 that are coming during the next 5 to 7 days. So we'll have to wait and see what happens after that.
And are you an educator? You're a teacher?
I'm a retired teacher, but right now what I'm doing is basically working with Internet Society,
Mm-hmm.
the global organization and the local chapter, and with the Internet Corporation of Assigned Names and Numbers, ICANN. So I'm dealing with registries and registrars establishing policy and regulations to gain access to Internet as an end user.
Well, great. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Okay, thank you.
JoAnn, I see you're from Texas. I'm a Texas native, born in San Antonio. You're from Seguin. Would you like to introduce yourself to the online audience?
Yes, hi.
Hi.
Actually, I work in Seguin, but I was born in San Antonio, and that's where I'm originally from as well. And
Okay.
I work for Seguin ISD, and I am their education data analyst.
Okay. And what are the numbers showing you?
Well, that's the problem. We kind of have a lack of numbers since we don't have accountability ratings from this past school year. So we're just kind of focusing on growth and progress with our students.
Are you going back face to face currently, or are you online?
We have given the option to offer face-to-face and virtual instruction. We did push back our first day of school, so we are starting next week. But we do have some kids that have signed up to be completely virtual and some that are going to be face-to-face.
Okay. Well, thanks very much. I hope you'll join our conversation today as we go forward.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Melissa, I see you're in Brazil. I'm actually in Portugal, so we're a bit of a country. Would you like to introduce yourself, Melissa? You're from California. It's where I was for the last 25 years before I came here. I was in San Francisco. Melissa, would you like to jump in? All right. How about Christopher? Christopher, would you like to introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure. I'm Chris Little, and I teach at a small boarding school on the shores of the Chesapeake Bay in Virginia. And I teach
Okay. Spanish?
Mhm.
All right. Whereabouts in Virginia is that?
It's right on the Chesapeake Bay, about an hour east of Richmond and 3 hours south of Washington.
Okay, yeah, sister and brother-in-law are in Springfield, so very familiar with that area.
It's really
So
nice.
are you guys starting online? Are you going back
Uh,
face?
we have waves of boarders coming, about 40 boarders at a time, isolating them for 2 weeks and testing them, and then bring the next wave once those people are negative. By the end of the month, we'll have all of our boarders in our bubble, and then we're going to decide what we're going to do with the day students then. I don't think any of our Chinese or Asian students are going to make it, so that's going to be all online. So we're going to have a hybrid kind of situation this fall.
Is that creating an additional significant workload for you?
We spent all summer working on Canvas and developing Canvas. So it's actually now, kind of set, and the challenge is doing this, getting people involved, and making sure that we don't lose our students who are completely online as compared to during class.
What age group are you dealing with? Is it high school?
Yeah, it's all high school. I teach 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for being with us. I hope you'll join the conversation as we go forward.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Maureen, would you like to say hello, Maureen? Are you there?
Hi, yes, sorry. Yeah, hi, I'm calling in from Toronto, and I am not a classroom teacher currently. I'm a former classroom teacher, and I run a children's choir. And I'm here because we have some resistance on staff to online teaching, and a little, I think, stress from the fall. So I'm just hoping to listen and learn today if there's any good ways to support our teaching staff.
Your teaching staff is actually teaching, or are you doing choir online? I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
Choir online. They're teaching a choir online. And as I said, they had some rough experiences, I think, in the spring, and I'm 3 days into the job. So I'm just wanting to offer some support as a former teacher, because I recognize that's really, it's student engagement is what they're struggling with. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
What age group are you dealing with?
Well, the whole program runs for 5 right up to 18, but I think the most challenging groups were the older students that actually had the hardest time with it.
Okay. Well, that's so interesting. I hope you'll stay involved in our conversation today as well. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All right. Reba, would you like to say hello, introduce yourself real quick?
Okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
Oh, yes. My name is Reba. I'm from Dallas, originally from California. I'm kind of in a unique work situation. I am an educational consultant with Houghton Mifflin Harcourt Publications, and they have a intervention reading program. So I consult and train teachers from K through 12 in reading, but I also sub as a teacher just to make sure I stay in the classroom on top of topics and the new ways. So we will be teaching, I will be a virtual sub, which will be very unique and new.
Right.
I'm really wondering how the district's going to do that. Are they going to give us canned lessons, which most likely I won't follow because a lot of those canned lessons are so boring.
Uh-huh.
And I also, since the pandemic, been tutoring some special needs students that like dyslexia, ADHD, autism in reading. So I do that online. So that's one-on-one.
Well, I got a couple of questions for you. One, are you hearing anything from the publishers like Mifflin about what they're thinking about this online experience? And a second part of that, is there a movement to rewrite some of the books based on the Black Lives Matter movement and what's happening, and the need to really think about racial education and understand that? Are you hearing any of those kinds of things from big organizations like that?
I was really surprised that they did. They jumped right on it. I don't know if you heard of Ibram, How to Be an Anti-Racist, but they pushed that book straight into one of their collections. They've had meetings because a lot of our schools with the struggling readers are a diverse population. So we coach and train teachers all over the world. And so they jumped right on it. They're pushing a lot of the training with everyone. They're talking with the schools. So I was really, really pleased. I was shocked, kind of shocked that they jumped right on it. But being a publishing company, they noticed that a lot of schools and teachers are requesting those types of texts in their classroom. I've noticed that with a lot of the teachers that I coach in their Google Classrooms, where they have their virtual library, they have increased the number of diverse books on their bookshelves for their students to use. But yes, they are definitely on top of that. As far as the online, we've switched over to a lot of webinars. The training for that, we did some of that, but we have increased it so much. But a lot of the teachers really want the face-to-face training. So, you know, everybody wants to get back inside, but they know it's not always safe. But that's been, so I've been really pleased with that.
Well, that's great. It's good to hear. I'm glad that they're being responsive to that. And I hope you'll join our conversation today, because if you're already working online with at-risk youth that are trying to do that, you probably have some good participation strategies. So we'd certainly like to hear from you as we go along.
Well,
So anytime, anytime, just raise your hand and I'll be happy to bring you in. In the Connected Classroom, we encourage everyone to talk. We try to bring them in as much as we can. A couple more people to say hi to, and then we'll get started. Sally Ann, is Sally Ann there? Would you like to introduce yourself to us real quick?
Hi, I'm listening from Trinidad and Tobago.
Oh, thank you very much. Are you an educator?
Yes.
Okay. What grade level or what do you teach?
Community college level.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much for being with us.
Okay.
How about Eileen? Eileen, would you like to say hello?
Hi, yeah, my name is Eileen. I'm from Penn State. I am an instructional designer and an instructor. And I just, you know, saw the topic and thought, let me see what you have to say.
Great. So what kind of things are working for you? You guys went virtual in the spring as well?
We went virtual in the spring, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And what was the feeling of the staff in terms of participation rates and so forth with the students?
I think the whole Zoom classroom is really difficult. We have a camera optional policy at our institution. So finding ways to encourage interaction over content is really important.
Right.
So that's what brought me here. Those are the things that we're working on.
Great. Well, thanks for being here. I hope you'll join our conversation as we go along. When you think about that, you're looking around at the screen right now, you can see most everyone has their camera turned off, and as an educator, that can be quite overwhelming. I'd love for Omar, if Omar wants to jump into the conversation, but I think Omar's running around doing other things as well, and people are multitasking. How about Maureen? Did we talk to Maureen? I don't think we did. Did we say hello, Maureen? Would you like to join the conversation real quick?
We did chat, yeah.
Okay. All right, so we have everyone in that's here with us today, and obviously I'd like to share my screen with you, and we'll talk a little bit about some participation. And again, this is not something that I have created. My role in this Learning Revolution class that I've been doing since the beginning of the pandemic was really to try to go out and collect resources for educators around the ideas that we're discussing. And one of those ideas, obviously for most of us, is the idea of participation. It's been a major issue across the board for many of us, and at every level in terms of getting people to participate. And one of the things that we did, that I do as part of this show in the Connected Classroom, is try to open the mics as much as possible. So if you can find your raise your hand icon and raise your hand if you have any comments or questions as we go through this, that would be really helpful. The first thing that I want to mention, and the thing that I think is really, really important that we think about outside of just the obvious that's happening all around us, is the fact that grief and loss is being experienced by everyone, both our educators, ourselves, our educators that we work with, as well as the kids that we're working with. And so it's really important to understand what that means And it's really important that we think about what stage or what cycle that these kids are in right now, and where they're coming to us from as we begin to prepare. And that's an individual thing. That's something that we need to kind of try to factor into all of our conversations when we're meeting with students, whether we're online or face-to-face. It sounds to me like the majority of our participants here today, with the exception of Chris, are starting online. But there will be a possibility within the next few months that we'll go back to a face-to-face situation, and taking into consideration, especially the older students, the grief and loss that they've experienced, as well as ourselves and as well as our coworkers. That's a big part of how we kind of get this conversation started. Participation right now, for a lot of educators, we've been pushed over the summer to think about this as being absolutely critical, that we stop the learning slide, that we think about the COVID slide as being the priority. And Eileen mentioned it just a minute ago, the idea of connection before content. And that's really the driving focus of this show, and it has been from the very beginning. It is important that we stop the slide, but the best way for us to do that is to connect with the kids and get them engaged in what's going on right now. How do we do that? We meet them where they are, understanding the grief and loss cycle, understanding and talking to the kids. These are all pivotal things that need to be done to increase participation rate. How do we do it? First, we have to notice it in ourselves. It's really obvious. It's really, really important. And you see article after article after article online and in every publication about teacher self-care. But teachers tend to be, for the most part, they tend to focus more on their students and trying to take care of their students. And because of the stress of what's going on, and because the worry about the slide and the things that are happening, oftentimes teachers are working harder. They're working longer hours. They're putting more pressure on themselves to try to do more and more. I was glad to hear from Chris that the work that they did over the summer on Canvas sounds like it's reduced their workload, so that they don't feel like that they're doubling up with the day students or the ones who are choosing to go online. So, but we really need to check and see and take a look at what we're doing and make sure that we're finding time for ourselves. My wife is an ultimate Frisbee player, and she hasn't played since the pandemic hit in March. And the Frisbee players are back. They've gone back and started practicing. Obviously, there's distancing rules and masks that have to be worn and so forth like that. But I continually every week remind her how important it is for her to get out of the house for a couple of hours and go do something that's important to her, and to get away from all of this and to get back to normal. And we need to do that. We need to continue to find ways to give ourselves an opportunity to relax a little bit and to stay focused on the facts. There's so much information out there right now, especially in the United States, where it's a political year. We're hearing different stats from different sides, and we don't know exactly what's out there. Focusing on what's coming from the CDC, focusing on what's coming from the WHO, focusing on what's coming in that sense, as opposed to the politically heated conversations that are happening right now. It's really important, and trying to minimize the amount of noise that's going on as we stay focused on what we need to be doing in order to go forward. And we can't take care of our students unless we're taking care of ourselves. So it's really important that we remember that, and that we think about how we're going to get started. And it starts with us, and that's by obviously leading by example. Some of the tools that I was reading about this week as I was preparing for the show, you'll notice, and Teddy's been with me since the very beginning, and Teddy's been a part of these shows, I think, almost from the beginning of the show in March. But one of the things that we do on this show, and I've had a lot of participants that have sent feedback in there saying that they don't like the introduction at the beginning. They think it takes too long, it's a waste of time, they want to get to the material. And if you hear that, what you're listening to is an adult talking about an educational opportunity, because adults don't require the relational component in order for them to connect to the material. If I'm a 57-year-old man, which I am, and I go onto a webinar and I'm expecting to get information about how to increase participation in the classroom, and I'm listening to a bunch of people introduce themselves from other countries and so forth, I'm thinking I'm wasting 15 minutes of my valuable time sitting here listening to other people participate. But as educators of majority of whom are we are educators of youth under the age of 25, that's not the case for them. And in order to get them involved, we have to really take advantage of that introduction time. And that's not just, it talks about it being an easy first assignment as we go into class starting next week in Texas or whenever your classes start up again. But that introduction time and that time to get back, if you think about that in terms of your teacher training or in terms of your face-to-face classrooms, especially the younger grades, how important it is to really introduce ourselves. And because now we don't have the classroom for a lot of us that are teaching online, a lot of us use the classroom as a way of introducing ourselves. We have our classroom decorated certain ways. We have our favorite sports teams on the wall or whatever our particular passion or interests are. And so the kids get to know us somehow, and oftentimes we forget to do that. We may encourage kids to talk a little bit about themselves in the first week or so of school, but then we tend to get involved in the curriculum and we don't do it. This year, especially when we're online, we have to continually be talking to our kids and finding out what's going on with them and building that community as we talk and encouraging that kind of thing as we go forward. And it's not just at the beginning of the year, it's constant. How do we do that? Well, one of the things that we can do is to check in class every day as we get together, whether it's once a week, twice a week, or 5 days a week, checking in with their class and asking them feelings, asking them open-ended questions about what's going on with them and talking to them and give them, you might set a time limit. We know that you have things that you need to do, and it's important that you get those things done. And so you might set a time limit, giving each student 30 seconds to do it. You might say that, we're going to do this and, in 50 words or less, or whatever it happens to be, but you're really trying to get a pulse for what they're feeling and what's going on with them right now in the pandemic, and finding out, talking to them about what they know, what they've heard recently, what their concerns are. I do online classes with small schools in Montana, online counseling. And when I met with one of my small schools for the first time last week, it was incredibly interesting. They're in a face-to-face situation, and so they're all social distanced and they all had masks on. It was very difficult to hear what they had to say and so forth. But I brought them each up individually to the camera and talked to them and asked them kind of what they'd heard. And the one thing that I heard that I hadn't really heard before from students was, this COVID thing is going to be with us forever. And so where they're coming from, the message that they're hearing is that this is not going to go away. Now, there's a lot of research right now that's saying that that's true, that this is going to become a part of the flu regime, but it's also important to remind the kids that the vaccines that they're going to be working on, that the kinds of things that they're developing right now will improve our annual flu vaccine so that this will be included in that. And to remind them that the flu is a dangerous thing. It comes around every year. And, thousands and thousands of people do die from it on a regular basis. This isn't unusual. This flu is, but if it's going to be with us, it's going to stay in our flu regime, but we need to fill them with facts and give them hope and ideas. The vaccines, the other things that they're working on right now, the reduction in the death rate in the last 6 months has been phenomenal. The reduction in the hospitalization rate in intensive care units in the UK, for example, in April, their intensive care numbers were 20,000 patients in intensive care. Right now, when they have so many more test positives than that, they only have 800 patients in intensive care. So we've figured out ways to manage the flu once we get it. We're keeping people out of intensive care. There's a lot of positive news out there. And talking to kids about it, finding out what they're feeling, finding out what they're missing, finding out what's going on with them. If they're an athlete, for example, if you're in a college situation and they lost their fall sports season, talking to them about those kinds of things. Any of those things will encourage conversation and get the student to realize that it's more about them than their test scores, that it's more about connection than content, and doing that as we begin to start moving forward and getting the class moving. Once we get the class moving, a number of different really unique ways to do this and I've seen this in face-to-face classrooms, as well as the use of student moderators. You have students, you talk to certain students that are in your class, and you ask them to help you moderate a topic. Now, you may have a meeting with them off to the side. You may use students that you're aware of in a high school situation that are more talkative than others. But once you get some students starting to talk, when you get students that the student voice gets going within the online platform, it's easier for them to begin for other students to take chances and to take risks. So using students in that, the younger grades, if you can do online kind of jobs and try to keep the routine as normal as possible and create some kind of things like that, using the chat room, having a student moderate the chat room. Like right now, for example, I could have a student be moderating my chat room. I can't stay up with the chats as we go forward as well as I would like to. So having a student moderate, if an interesting comment comes across that, we can have that moderator raise a hand. We can go to that moderator. They can read the chat that was written out, and we can begin to incorporate that into what's happening. It's sort of, think about a talk radio show, right? So you have the host of the show, and then you also have the producer, who oftentimes is the one who's screening the calls and is also involving themselves in the conversation every now and then. So that's a really good way to do it. Another thing we can do is we have to go back to the beginning of our Education 101, which is asking the open-ended question, and making sure that when we are asking questions that we've thought about the questions and how we're going to draw kids in. Maybe we ask it from a different angle. We're trying to get kids talking, obviously, is what we're trying to do. So we need to ask the right kind of questions and really think about what kind of questions we're asking. As we mentioned earlier, we talked about things, how would this affect you? How would you think about that kind of thing? And when you do that, what you're encouraging is debate. The other students start to think about this, and you're trying to get them kind of fired up about what's going on. And there's so many things to talk about right now to get kids going. And this may be, again, this could be the first 5 minutes of the class period where you're talking about some of the events that happened in the country this week and getting people talking about, hey, what's going on, or what are your thought processes about this, and so forth, and trying to really get started. That's the hardest thing, whether it's in a face-to-face conference, and I used to do conferences all around the country, and the hardest thing to do in a room full of educators is to get the first person talking. And once you get them going, then you get other people starting to go in, and you start to ask more questions. And if you see somebody nodding their head, you can do that, and you can follow that way and pay attention. So what we're trying to do is create debate. We're trying to encourage people. Another good thing that we can do is we can ask about their previous involvement in the material that we're talking about. And here's some other strategies that we came up with here, which were it's actually from 2012, but increasing student participation in the classroom. But it was really interesting to me when I realized how much that this really transfers over to the online environment. And so I think we paused. Let's see. How do we pause the screen share? Not even sure how I did that. So I'm going to stop the share and try it again. We'll go back to here. And the screen share here is some of the other things. Is the content that we're talking about repetitive? And so what we want to talk about is assessing their prior knowledge, asking them simple questions about what they know. We do this with the COVID-19, talking about that, getting them started. We can also do that with the information that we're sharing with them. asking them about their prior knowledge, finding out what they're doing, and then small grouping students and having them work together in smaller groups, even in the Zoom classroom, being able to create smaller groups based on what students know about the topics and getting them talking to each other there. It's sort of like when we're in a classroom, we put kids together in a group, and then we have somebody report out for that group. Working together in those small groups is really important for them to do that. Another reason kids don't participate is the content is too hard, and that can be the same thing online. We may be struggling coming up with ways to really articulate ourselves effectively in this new online environment. And so we want to allow anonymous questions, and we can have set up stuff where the students can submit questions that aren't, and even that they can do privately to you, so that they're not going to be embarrassed by asking a question that they may feel makes them feel like the other kids are going to make fun of them or so forth. Allowing them to work together obviously is an important one. There's too much information in a short period of time. We've been talking about this since the beginning of the show. One of the things that's really important is that we're keeping everything bite-sized. And again, this is from 2012, and we're talking about how do we do this in a face-to-face classroom. But this is where education is going right now, where we do small bite-sized pieces and we try to get them to participate, and we don't overwhelm it where we're taking up too much of the time, which is actually what I'm doing right now. In a lot of different ways, I'm taking up way too much of the time. So I want to stop every now and then and check in and see what other people are hearing. Eileen, for example, maybe you'll join us and talk a little about what we're talking from your perspective. Are you there? Are you multitasking as
Yeah,
well?
no, I'm here. Yeah, I am multitasking.
Okay.
what our faculty really hate, and me too. Yeah, I mean, these are all strategies that, I think are becoming more critical in an online environment, especially that idea of chunking, because, the hour-long lectures don't work anymore in this environment. And making sure that they're, really intentional about the interaction. A little bit of content, interaction, a little bit of content, interaction.
Yep, perfect. Thank you. Reba, I'd like to go to you and ask you your thoughts on that with the kids that you work with. How do you maintain, first and foremost, has your hand been up the whole time? I'm sorry, I didn't see
it just
that.
went up.
Okay. So in terms of that, what do you think about what you've been hearing, and then how does it relate to what you've been doing in the reading classes?
Well, the number one thing you said the first time is that teachers just want to get to the content, and that's been not working. And they have to. I mean, when I go on, I say good morning to them, how was your weekend, blah, blah, blah. And then I tell them something about me. And I might show them something, or I bought something new, or what kind of animal I like, and I get them to start talking. And like you just said, they think that they're losing their time, but you're losing the students. And so once they know a little bit about you, they have a connection with you, and they'll start wanting to ask you questions, and you say, well, we'll get to that. Let's do this. And it's a motivation for them to get through. And teachers think that they're bribing them. I don't want to play games. I don't want to bribe them to get them to learn, but we're distant. They've lost that whole connection with you. So that's the very first thing in which you mentioned that is critical. The other thing is you're going to find that some of your shyer students are going to be more willing to talk now. There are a lot of teachers that have been surprised that those kids are now talking because they don't have the noise in the classroom. They don't really not concerned about what the other student's going to say. But again, in the inline classroom, you have to set some protocols at the very beginning. The good thing is you can boot them out, but the other thing is just really getting them to respect each other's voice. A lot of times they don't hear each other's voices in the classroom. Right. And so that's what the online classroom has brought to that. But like you said, the breaks, the fun things, the games to play, you have to keep that connection. And plus they've been through so much since we've been out. A lot of our kids are stressed. Everything that's happening, good and bad, it is worrisome to our children. Right. So checking in and saying, okay, what did you guys do that was good this weekend? Or what was the fun thing? Or tomorrow we're going to all pick up something red and bring it to the class. Again, you have to be concerned about social economic. You can't say, well, wear a red shirt because everybody may not have a red shirt. Right. Or bring a toy or whatever. So you have to be conscious of all of that. but just connecting and also taking that time to meet with the parents.
Okay.
One teacher I thought was really good. She met like 10 minutes after class. She met with the parents for all their questions. But
Great. Thank you so much. That's great feedback. Teddy's got his hand up. Go ahead, Teddy.
I wanted to add to what Reba said. I definitely agree with having that introduction part when you meet somebody. I know working at the library, especially this semester, given that our library I work at, we've had different circumstances since last semester. And now when we have incoming freshmen and transfers, you know, how do you start that communication with them? How do you make them feel comfortable? How you let them know that whatever they need or want, they can get it here without being judged and have that assurance. I definitely agree with her. And as a shy student myself back in middle school and high school, it's very important that anyone who doesn't feel comfortable needs to eventually find their comfort zone. And without the introduction, it's really hard.
Yeah, I agree with you. Thank you, Teddy. And that's one of the things that, and Chris, I want to come to you in a second if you want to share too, because I'd like to hear your thoughts on what you've been hearing so far. But as a counselor, and we talk to teachers about connecting in the online or the concrete classroom, we talk about the idea that so many teachers do want to rush to content, and without the connection piece, and that's something that happens throughout the year, that you start to lose the student, what Reba said. But what's more important too is that you think it's going to save you, that you need to get to the content. But once you lose the student, then you start having the discipline problems, then you start to have to reteach, and then you start to have to go back and start over again, and you have to discipline, and you have all these things that are happening. And so in the long run, the more time you spend in the connection piece, the more time you spend in the introduction piece, the more connected you are on a daily basis to your kids, the more work you're actually going to get done. And that, I think people, when they hear something like Eileen mentioned about chunking, or that, hey, I got to do this, or you know, you fall in love with your own voice, and it's so important. It gives you more time, and my experience has always been that way, whether online or in the concrete classroom. Chris, do you want to share?
Sure. I was just thinking how funny it is because I teach Spanish, and so content is communication. I mean, it's like in most of my classes, getting kids to speak and getting kids to connect and getting kids to tell stories about themselves is how you get the content across. And the more they feel comfortable just talking, the more they want to learn more so they can say more complicated things and get up to their native level, the level that they can think and speak in their native language. So for languages, it's kind of, the content is secondary to the communication. But I wanted to mention too this comment that's going on in the chat room about shy students. In my conversation classes in the past, in face-to-face classes, it was always hard to get shy students to participate fully in conversations because like my classes are pretty lively and it's too much. I find when you have the hybrid classroom, it really gives them a space to open up and speak and participate fully. And that, I think this is something that we should look at this fall as a huge opportunity to kind of really design coursework for kids to make them want to learn. And I think what you're saying, like communicating with kids and getting to know them and getting them invested in the classroom learning is hugely key. So
Thank you.
Yeah, it's really important.
Thank you. And I also want to pony back on that is the idea that for a lot of kids, as Reba said, and I think Chris is mentioning the same thing, a lot of kids are really fine with this environment. They're fed up with all the politics and all the he said, she said of high school and all that stuff. There's a lot of kids that aren't in the popular group and they're just not interested in all that. And they just want to learn and it's easier for them. So I think these opportunities and these hybrid opportunities do provide at least a different kind of learning for a lot of students, and it's important that we explore that and figure out ways to maximize that for those students. But I'm trying to learn Portuguese right now. I live in Portugal, and I sit there and I study for about 2 hours a day online, and I'm reading and I'm memorizing, and I have a lot of words in my vocabulary and so forth. But man, you try to speak and you go out into public and you try to open your mouth, and I just get so embarrassed and I'm so nervous and I can't say anything. I forget everything that I've learned. And that's such a good example. And we kind of have to look at what we're doing right now from the perspective. Maybe we need to go out to all the language associations around the country or around the world and say to them, you guys need to start leading us, because how do you get kids to start talking in a foreign language in a classroom full of 16-year-olds who are all embarrassed by anything stupid or silly or saying something that makes the other kids laugh? And, that could be a real opportunity for us. So Maggie Brennan joined us. Maggie, would you like to introduce yourself to the group? We're just kind of having an open conversation. If you'd like to say hello, you're probably there. Are you there, Maggie?
Hi. Sorry, I joined a little bit late and I wasn't really sure what I was jumping into. Speaking of language teachers, I'm a former Spanish teacher, but I'm now like an ed tech specialist, and I'm calling you from Buenos Aires. That's where I now live. I was a New York State teacher for a long time, but now I'm here in Buenos Aires. And as I said, I just joined late, but I've been giving a lot of webinars online about, how people can do this best. And I think that that's what everybody's feeling. Like we were all talking about different tools you can use and all this, great, steps that you can take and tools you can use and models you can employ. And then we finally, at the end, just yesterday, we were all saying, you know what, I think we just need to step back and say, we're going to do what we can when we can and prioritize the relationships with the students first. So it's not really about ed tech. It's not about, how many units I need to get through of my Spanish class. It's more about how we can really help the kids. And let's face it, helping the kids helps us. It's connecting with the other humans. It's being able to express ourselves rather than sitting alone in a room. So I guess that's really all that I had to I was agreeing with all of you guys as you were going on, saying how important it is to prioritize relationships and do what we can. And in the process, you will teach, you're teaching resilience, you're teaching creativity, you're teaching human relationships, how to get along best with other people and how to adaptability to all of these new situation we're all in, which nobody would have even imagined 6 months ago. It's just crazy. I can't get my head around it. Yeah. But anyway, I guess I've answered your question. I'm sorry. I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of rambling.
Thank you. And again, I want to share my screen another time if I can. I'm going to try and get back to an earlier slide that I had created a while ago for one of the earlier shows that we did, talking about that connection before content thing. Kind of finish up the show today with some ideas about how do we do that, and that some of the things that we work on and that. And I think what Maggie said is so important, because what we're dealing with right now is unprecedented, obviously, but what we need to think about is that what is really important right now, if the slide has already happened, and it has for a lot of the kids, the slide has already happened. What's really important right now? What are we trying to teach them? What are we trying to get across in the next 4 or 5 months as we hopefully work our way back to normal? And, in my mind, because as we talked about earlier with the idea of the slide and so forth, but to be able to do things to connect with kids and to be able to help them to be resilient, because we don't know what the fallout from this is going to be. We don't know how long the economic, obviously there's some positive economic things coming. God, I don't know how. I don't know where all this money is coming from, that people are just apparently printing money right now. But, when are the jobs going to happen? And when are kids going to get back to that? 2008, we saw the peak of the crisis of 2008 didn't really come until 2011. What's education going to look like in 2 or 3 years from now? Are teachers going to leave in enough numbers where we have significant issues in public education in terms of qualified staff? Are these educational pods and micro schools going to take off? These are all questions as educators that we can't answer right now, but what we can do is we can work on these kinds of skills to encourage kids to get through this. And that's really what we need to be doing right now, is finding ways, depending on the age of your child or depending on how old the kids are that you're working with, these are things that we can do. The first 5, last 5, that's the beginning and the end of your lesson, where you're opening up your mic and you're talking to people and you're asking the questions. The last 5 of the meeting, you're trying to get feedback, you're trying to check out, you're giving an exit ticket or something like that to kind of just doing it. But we're focusing on feelings. Any writing that we're doing, we're paying attention to that, using facial expressions, noticing progress, being positive, bringing the energy that we have into the room, having a positive quote. I do a 1-minute daily video for kids in elementary school around the country. I've been doing that for 17 years. And this year's show, it starts off with a thought for the week, like, if things never change, there wouldn't be butterflies. And so there's these really good kinds of things to start it off with, where we build these positives into what we're doing. We're speaking in future tense. When we get through this thing, when we get back to football, when we're able to do this again, creating routine, making them feel comfortable within what we're doing. These are all ways to create that kind of thing with your students. And it really, I've had so many teachers, and it's more high school teachers than anywhere else. And I might ask Chris this question. It sounds like he has a lot of fun with his kids, but I am so, all the time, I'm amazed at how high school teachers will tell me, that stuff doesn't work with high school kids. They just think it's stupid, it's not cool, it's blah, blah, blah. That is not true. They just don't want to act like it's okay. They don't want to look like it's okay. They want to look like it's cool, but they're actually really appreciating the fact that you took the time to do it. And Chris, I'm going to ask you to jump in again, if you don't mind, in your experience with that. Do you find that true with high school kids? Are they receptive to this kind of thing?
It depends on how you structure the class. I mean, the most important thing in language classes is making it so the kids control the class, the kids manage the class. And once that happens, they're really into lots of things. And it's kind of guiding them in the direction of talking in the future tense or something like that, that is important. In my experience, and I've been teaching for about 37 years now, high school students are really into kind of new ways of learning and communicating and sharing. And if you give them the free rein to show you something, especially show you something of themselves, they're really excited about stuff. So.
Well, you must have started teaching when you were like 10, because you look like you've been in 37 years. Congratulations. And I don't know of many educators that look that good after 37 years. Reba, what's your experience with high school students and emotionality and trying to get it connected with them?
One of the things, like you just said, they want to act like it's not cool, but it is. When you start doing things like science experiments in your kitchen, and you start showing them, they're like, is that your house? You're like, yeah, that's my house, but let's do the science experiment. They feel like they've intruded into your world. They think they got something on you, but then they start getting involved in the lessons. I've also, even though, I didn't know TikTok really had a lot of educational things, but I brought in the TikTok videos, but I have to screencast it so the music won't show up, because some of the music is not really good, but some of the activities, and letting them come on, like you said, having them be the moderator, having them be the teacher. So-and-so, you got kids there who think they are, they're TikTok and Snapchat and Instagram. Now they can put all those talents to use in the classroom, because we're virtual. And
Nice.
They like coming into teaching, and they like to hear from so-and-so. And you got to be careful. You got to set the rules. But high school kids like virtual setting, because, they're always on their phone and all that. But they will talk. You can also have them send you their responses privately. Mm-hmm. And then they can say, well, I don't want you to really say anything, but I believe this and I believe that. And you can kind of maneuver a way of giving out their responses, and then asking them, can I share what you said? And they'll say, okay. And then other kids will say, I agree with so-and-so. And someone will say, I never heard Sally talk before. Mm-hmm. She's really got a lot going on or whatever. But high school kids like this environment. Like Christopher said, you just got to get them to just be a part of it. They like it. I don't know what else to say.
Thank you. When I think about, what did I just do? I can't ever think about what I'm doing here. When I think about the idea of the true mentor in high school, I had several mentors throughout my education. There was a coach in 8th and 9th grade who was a huge influence on me. But the one who really got me was my senior English teacher, Rose Throkelch. And I was a 17-year-old kid. I was just as lost in my own world, and I didn't want to be affected by an adult, but somehow she reached in and she got me. And it wasn't so much about emotions or those kinds of things. She saw something in me. She took the time to get to know me. She took the time to help me to understand who I was. And maybe it's different. I mean, I think a lot of times when we think about these things like morning meetings and you know, introducing yourself and doing icebreakers, and we think, oh, high school kids they're not interested in this stuff. But we go to, you know, when we go to conventions, you do, you know, you do icebreakers for adults, you do that kind of stuff. And it's not a morning meeting like you would do in kindergarten, but you can find ways to get them to bring something of themselves into a meeting. How they set up their classroom. You know, it may be, if you're in a virtual situation, they have, you know, bring something, or ask each one of them, you know, put something on the wall behind you that represents who you are, and just find out ways to get in, to find out just a little bit more about them. This does not have to be you guys becoming best friends, and you obviously need to have boundaries. I love what Reba said about being in the kitchen, because I know a lot of teachers, especially when we have Red Ribbon Week, which in the elementary K-12 environment is Drug and Alcohol Week, and a teacher will get caught in the supermarket with a case of beer or something, and they're like, oh my God, my student saw me. And the students are looking at them like, I didn't even know you left school. Like, they actually think we live in our classroom, and they don't even know, like the younger kids, they don't even know we don't live there. And so it's like this, allowing ourselves to be human and bringing that, and especially right now, because I'm scared. You're scared. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if my job's going to be here next week. I don't know what's happening either. So for me to put on this, you know, everything's fine, and I'm just going to keep going forward, and I'm just going to keep doing it the way I've always done it. You know, I read this thing, Smart Classroom Management, and I love this guy. I've been reading his posts for years, but he's really, during the pandemic, he's just taken this approach that he's just going to plow right through it and keep doing everything he's always done. And I just don't think that makes any sense. You know, I don't think that that's going to work. Maybe it's going to work for him. I mean, obviously he's good at what he does. I read his stuff, but I just think in the virtual environment, in the virtual classroom, it may work with the students who show up, but you know, you may end up with 50% of the students that you're supposed to have, because those other 50% are just going to tune out, or they're going to turn their camera off if they have the opportunity to do that, and they're just not going to participate. So you're not going to get the same results. So we need to really think about this, and we need to allow ourselves to be open to what we're feeling, what our students are feeling, and encourage that dialogue as part of, absolutely as what's going on. I would imagine Chris, I'm sure, and also Maggie, if she was still doing the language stuff, this is all we'd be talking about. You know, how do you, in Spanish or whatever, talking about COVID-19 and expressing yourself about, you know, what your summer was like, and that sort of thing. Get this conversation started. They want to talk to somebody. They're scared. Oftentimes their parents are scared, and their parents are looking for work, or they don't know what's going to happen with their mortgage. You know, we're coming right up on the doorstep of them beginning the eviction process, I believe, in the United States, which I'm sure is just, you know, the challenge that's going to lead to a number of our families in the lower economic situations is going to be amazingly difficult. So encourage this part of the conversation. Bring yourself and your passion into there. Make sure that you're okay, that your kitchen is okay. You know, just in case you happen to have a picture of a really handsome guy, or a really kind of a bikini dressed woman or something, you got to make sure your background, check your, we always say in the military, check your six. Be sure you check your six. You got to check your six, and you tell your kids the same thing. This is another thing you can do to get with them, is kind of teach them about how to set up their online classroom, so that they feel, if you're looking at the view that I'm looking at, and you can see everybody that's got their camera on, that's a little view into their life. So help them figure out how to kind of cool up their, you know, put a poster back there that of a band that you like, or are they even posters anymore? I don't know. But whatever it is that you do, just to kind of liven it up, but help them get comfortable, and make it more fun for them as well. Anybody else? Anybody have any final comments? Raise a hand. Oh, we got Maggie. Okay, go ahead, Maggie. Let me get you in. Go ahead.
Okay, I was just going to build on what Reba said to take advantage of the positives that we have here. Many years ago, when we were still back in the classroom, and I did this project every single year at the end of the year, where every kid made their own podcast, which was really just an audio recording, right? But it was amazing to me every single year, the difference between the kid in the class and the kid recording, you know, how he would speak or what he would say or how he'd express himself in the class as compared to in his bedroom by himself in an audio recording.
Wow.
You know, it was a completely different skill set. And in fact, I wrote a whole thesis on it that was published because I couldn't believe the amount of difference. They felt so much more confident and loose. And you could even hear the difference in their accent. You know, they'd actually try to have a Spanish accent, you know, rather than just getting out the words and the basic, you know, skill of the basic sentences, you know, because they didn't have somebody looking over their shoulder and judging them, or at least that's how they feel that they're being judged. So I think very often, you know, like dealing with any type of audio recordings or any type of individual responses now in this hybrid environment when they're on their own, it really provides a wonderful private connection between you and the students. Not everything needs to be shared 100% live with the whole class on Zoom. You know, they can turn in assignments on the side, they can turn in audio recordings on the side, and that could be a wonderfully private way for them to not only communicate, connect, but to also connect with you. So I just wanted to emphasize the positive that we're doing here too.
Yeah, and that's something that a lot of people are talking about, is varying the way that students get to interact with you, is varying that. So you give them opportunities that they can come back and forth and they can talk to you in different ways. They can respond to the education, self-directed learning as well. Go find out what you want to find out about dinosaurs, or go find out what you want to find out about Spain or Argentina or whatever it happens to be, and then come back and provide that, present that information to me. And that'll give you an insight into what's important to them. You know, if they go into Spain and they start talking about the surfing there, or they start talking about mountain climbing in Argentina or whatever it happens to be, or they talk about animals or whatever, that gives you insight into the student. So allowing them to mix up the way that they're responding back to you. And you got to set boundaries so that you don't overwhelm yourself. I mean, obviously, if you get a 10-minute podcast from every kid, that's going to be a difficult one. You may want to fast forward that, putting time limits on those things. Reba, thank you. I'm glad to hear California has put a pause on the mortgage foreclosures. PA did not extend the addiction pause. So I guess in Pennsylvania, that's not the case. So there's going to be a lot that's going to be coming up in the next gosh, who knows? I mean, if the rebound is supposed to come, if the boomerang's supposed to hit in October, you know, we may have only 3 or 4 or 5, 6 weeks before everything kind of goes back to another lockdown situation. So whatever you're going to do, just do it with some passion, do it with some empathy, put all of yourself into it, and just really be present and be there and excited. Take advantage of the positives like Maggie mentioned. And remember that the kids are looking to you. You're one of the most trusted adults in their lives, whether they're in college or in kindergarten. And, you know, it's important that we can do that for them. Hey, Teddy, you got any final comments?
Yes, I definitely enjoyed today's discussion. I look forward to seeing everyone next week. Like Rusty's been saying, you know, let's keep this conversation going, but let's also be mindful of what's going on in our both professional lives and private lives, and try to make the most out of the situation.
Thanks, Teddy. Anybody else? Any final thoughts before we go? Chris, Eileen, anything? All good? Eileen, yeah?
Yeah, I was just going to say this just confirms what I've been thinking and doing even in my own class and my work with faculty. So thank you for the discussion. I mean, just yesterday, I'm big with index cards. I do have a hybrid class. So everybody has an index card. First 5 minutes, write 3 things. How are you feeling today? How do you feel about college overall? And how do you feel when you have to sit with your online course? And then 5 minutes share with each other, and then we have a little share out, and then we get on with our class. So, you know, this just confirms what I've already been doing. So thank you.
Yeah. Are you guys playing football this year? Is Penn State playing?
No.
That's going to be
all of our sports have been canceled. And, you know, I really appreciate the, you know, reference back to the grief cycle, you know.
Yeah.
They are really dealing with a lot of grief, and we are too.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Good luck. Reba?
I'm glad you had this session, but I wish that more districts were having the same discussion with their teachers instead of just always about content and all of that, because a lot of the teachers are inexperienced with this whole virtual environment. But I wish this could be one of the main forefronts of every agenda item, is talking about connecting with students online. This would increase a lot of the absenteeism, but I'm glad you're having this.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. And we're also at Learning Revolution. The people that have the weekly shows like mine, we meet every Friday, and we were talking about that last week. We want to put on something, an online thing that can be used by schools as a professional development thing to really just talk specifically about that, connecting in the virtual world and connecting in the virtual classroom. So we're hoping to be able to put that together as soon as possible and then just be able to share it out. What I love about Learning Revolution is there's no economic drive. It's just they're sharing information and they're doing it. There's so many people that are giving away free stuff, and then all of a sudden, they've got 10 things they want you to buy, or professional developments and so forth. And this just needs about helping teachers and trying to keep public education afloat, because I don't know what's going to happen or how the demographics are going to change, because if you're a family that has money and you have economic opportunity, then you're probably going to keep your kid in some other environment, or charter school, micro school, pod, which means that our public schools will then become pretty much only a place where kids that don't have another choice. And that's not what public education was supposed to be. That's not what charter schools are. Charter schools are supposed to be all about choice, but what it's going to create is a situation where you don't have a choice unless you have the economic reality of that. And I've made that comment about, especially the United States, the idea that money is as big of a dividing factor in all of the things that we're talking about as anything else, race or educational opportunity or any of those things. If you don't, money is a divider. So that's a whole nother topic. But anyway, thank you guys for being here. I can't thank you enough. We're here every Wednesday, as Teddy said. So join us again if you'd like to. I'd really appreciate it. You can become one of our, not supporters, but one of our members on the website, Learning Revolution, on my weekly class. You can click on there and you can join, and we have some information that we put out every week and stuff like that. So thank you all very much. Thank you for what you're doing. You're affecting the future, as we've always said, but this year more so than ever. You're the boots on the ground, and these kids need you. Absolutely, they need you. So thank you again for all that you're doing, and for all that you're doing for the kids in your care. We'll see you next week here on the Connected Classroom.